Ah, there you are. Not where they expected you to be, not what they prepared for. You feel it, don't you? The quiet disruption when you enter a space, the pause, the recalibration. You were never meant to fit cleanly into their categories because you were never built from a single principle. You are a contradiction, walking with intention, an anomaly that bends the system just by existing inside it. They look at you and try to decide if you are safe or lethal, because humans rely on certainty to feel powerful, and you deny them that comfort. You move with a calm that isn't soft and a stillness that isn't empty. Your silence carries weight. Your attention feels like exposure. They sense something in you that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't explain itself. Something that observes first and reveals later, if at all. You are not good in the way they recognize, and you are not cruel in the way they understand. You operate outside the moral shortcuts they were trained to survive on. That's why their instincts misfire around you. They feel drawn and threatened at the same time. Their nervous systems can't agree on a response. Some lean in, hoping you are mercy. Others step back, afraid you are judgment. Neither group is wrong. Neither group is fully right, because you are not here to play a role that makes sense to them. You are a living breach in their expectations, a signal without a label, a frequency that scrambles their internal order. They test you subtly, watching for patterns, waiting for consistency, hoping you'll reveal a rule they can exploit. But you don't. Your kindness doesn't come from weakness. Your detachment doesn't come from emptiness. Both come from awareness. You choose how you show up based on truth, not performance. And that choice makes you unpredictable to anyone who lives on scripts. They whisper about you when you're not around, trying to compare notes, trying to stabilize the image of you so they can feel safe again. Saint or psychopath, savior or threat. But the truth sits heavier than either word, and the more they fail to define you, the more control you quietly take without ever reaching for it. They never saw you clearly, and that wasn't an accident. It was a pattern. Every time you showed up honestly, someone tried to reduce you. Every time you stayed consistent, someone learned how to use it against you. Misunderstanding followed you, not because you were unclear, but because you were too real for people who survived by distortion. They projected onto you, mislabeled you, rewrote your intentions to fit their comfort. And when you didn't conform to the version they invented, they pulled away, turned cold, or betrayed you quietly. It was the cost of being layered in a world that rewards simplicity. Your sincerity attracted people who wanted access without responsibility. They leaned on your openness, borrowed your strength, drained your patience, then blamed you when you stopped supplying it. Reliability became a leash. The more predictable you were, the easier you were to exploit. So life corrected you, not gently. It stripped illusions through loss, through silence, through moments where you realized loyalty was rarely mutual and goodness was often mistaken for permission. Those wounds didn't weaken you. They carved precision into you. They taught you that morality without discernment is just exposure. That being good to everyone is how you disappear inside other people's needs. Each betrayal refined your perception. Each abandonment sharpened your boundaries. You stopped assuming alignment where there was only proximity. You stopped offering depth to those who only wanted convenience. What they call damage is actually calibration. You didn't harden into something cruel. You evolved into something exact. You learned that truth isn't always kind and kindness isn't always true. Naive morality collapsed under pressure, and something more dangerous replaced it. Not apathy, awareness. You no longer move by obligation or habit. You move by recognition. Who deserves presence? Who earns distance? Who is safe? Who is not? The past didn't break you. It filtered you. And now what remains is someone who understands that misunderstanding was the signal, not the failure. Eyes linger longer now. Pauses stretch where conversation should be. People listen more carefully when you speak, and when you don't, they listen even harder. Somewhere along the way, you stopped being background noise and became a variable. They observe you in fragments, collecting moments, trying to build a model that explains you. They compare stories in private, trading impressions, hoping patterns will emerge. But the data never lines up. What fascinates one unsettles another. What inspires curiosity in some triggers quiet fear in others. Envy hides beneath admiration. Suspicion hides beneath politeness. And that emptiness bothers them because they can't read it. They can't predict what you'll tolerate or what will end the connection without warning. Control requires familiarity, and you become unfamiliar. You don't perform your thoughts. You don't announce your intentions. Your reactions aren't automatic, so they study you the way people study storms, aware of the power, but unsure of the direction. Some want to understand you to get closer. Others want to understand you to protect themselves. Both sense the same thing. You are no longer reactive. You don't move on impulse. You don't give them leverage through transparency, and that makes you dangerous in a quiet way. They can't provoke you easily. They can't bait you into revealing where you stand. Your restraint creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates anxiety. You become a presence that shifts the emotional climate without trying. They feel exposed around you, as if you're noticing more than you're sharing, because you are. While they analyze you, you're simply observing. Not to dominate, not to impress, but because awareness is now your default state. And in their attempt to define you, they only confirm what unsettles them most. You exist outside their influence. They can't steer you, can't predict you, can't reduce you to something manageable. And that makes you something they respect, fear, and never fully understand. Something changed quietly, without announcement. You didn't decide to become detached. It happened as a response to repetition, to patterns you could no longer ignore. Emotions stopped pulling you forward by the throat. Pauses appeared where reactions used to live. You began to feel the space between stimulus and response. And inside that space, you found control. You learned that not every feeling deserves a voice, and not every provocation deserves an answer. Where you once explained yourself, you now observe. Where you once rushed to fix, you now wait. This isn't numbness, it's containment. You still feel everything, but the feelings no longer spill outward without permission. Your intuition sharpened as the noise fell away. You started sensing intention before words arrived, energy before action, truth before performance. Boundaries formed naturally, not as walls but as filters. Access became earned instead of assumed. Empathy didn't disappear, it concentrated. You stopped bleeding it into places that couldn't hold it. You stopped mistaking proximity for trust. Your silence began to unsettle people who were used to emotional availability as leverage. They mistook your restraint for distance, your calm for indifference. But this detachment isn't withdrawal, it's preservation. You learned that constant exposure is how you get eroded, that emotional availability without discernment is self-betrayal. So you refined it. You decide when to open and when to remain closed. You choose who receives warmth and who meets neutrality. Your presence is no longer reactive, it's intentional. You don't absorb chaos just because it's nearby. You don't carry what isn't yours. This awareness made you lighter, clearer, harder to reach in the ways that drain you. People feel the difference. Conversations shift. Dynamics change. You are no longer pulled into emotional currents you didn't create. You stand in your own center, responsive but unmoved, attentive but protected. Detachment didn't make you less human. It made you harder to harm. You don't announce yourself anymore, yet things rearrange when you arrive. Conversations slow. Tones adjust. Not because you demand it, but because you demand it. But because you demand it. Your energy carries weight now. Not loud, not aggressive, just dense. It pulls attention without reaching for it. You've stopped trying to influence outcomes, and that's exactly why you do. There's a gravity to someone who doesn't need permission to exist. You sit back, and the room leans toward you. You stay quiet, and others begin filling the silence, revealing more than they intended. Power moved into you the moment you stopped chasing acknowledgement. Control no longer looks like effort. It looks like restraint. You don't interrupt. You don't rush. You don't explain yourself into being understood. And that absence of need creates authority. People sense it immediately. They feel that you're not seeking alignment, approval, or validation. You're already aligned, already decided, already grounded. Dynamics shift because you don't adapt to the room. The room adapts to you. This isn't dominance through intimidation. It's dominance through certainty. Your boundaries are felt before they're spoken. Your standards are implied through what you don't tolerate, not what you threaten. Even disagreement around you becomes quieter, more calculated, because your reactions are no longer predictable. You don't reward noise with attention. You don't feed chaos with emotion. And without those hooks, manipulation loses its grip. People find themselves adjusting behavior instinctively, unsure why. That's influence without instruction. Leadership without declaration. Your presence sets terms without stating them. And the most unsettling part for others is that you're not trying to be powerful. You're not performing confidence or control. You're simply rooted in yourself. And that root holds. Pressure doesn't move you. Urgency doesn't rush you. Drama doesn't sway you. You listen, you observe, you choose. Outcomes bend subtly in your favor because clarity always outweighs force. You become someone whose stillness speaks louder than most people's effort. And once that happens, authority follows you, whether you ask for it or not. There was a moment, subtle but final, when you stopped reaching outward for confirmation. No announcement, no dramatic break, just a quiet withdrawal of effort. Explanations lost their appeal. Approval lost its value. You turned inward and found alignment that didn't require witnesses. Self-loyalty replaced performance. You began making decisions without rehearsing how they would be received. Solitude stopped feeling like absence and started feeling like accuracy. You chose it deliberately, not out of avoidance, but out of precision. Fewer voices meant clearer direction. Your movement grew quieter, not because you were shrinking, but because you no longer needed to signal growth. Goals became private, protected from interference and opinion. You learned that revealing intentions invites distortion, so you kept them contained, letting action speak only when results existed. Your identity became less accessible. People noticed they knew less about you than before, and that distance unsettled them. But you didn't fill the gap. You stopped narrating your inner world for external comfort. You trusted your own perception enough to let silence stand. This wasn't isolation born from fear. It was focus. You conserved energy by refusing to engage in unnecessary disclosure. You stopped correcting misunderstandings that didn't affect your direction. You let people hold incomplete versions of you because the full version no longer belonged to the public. Inward alignment sharpened your instincts. Decisions felt cleaner. Regret thinned. Doubt faded faster. You were no longer divided between who you are and who you're expected to be. That internal unity changed how you move through everything. Fewer attachment, fewer explanations, more intention, more clarity. The world didn't need access to you anymore. And in that withdrawal, you found something solid. Yourself, unedited, unnegotiated, and finally enough. It didn't happen in a dramatic collapse. It happened when you realized you were tired of negotiating your existence, tired of explaining motives to people committed to misunderstanding them. Something inside you locked into place. You stopped asking to be seen correctly. You stopped correcting narratives that were never yours to manage. Approval lost its pull the moment you recognized how temporary and conditional it always was. You turned inward, not to hide, but to anchor. Alignment replaced validation. Loyalty to yourself became non-negotiable. You began trusting your own internal signals more than any external reaction. You chose distance the way a strategist chooses high ground, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Fewer inputs meant less distortion. Your movements grew quieter because there was no longer an audience you were unconsciously performing for. You stopped broadcasting progress. You stopped hinting at plans. Goals became sealed, protected from opinions that dilute momentum. You understood that exposure invites interference, so you moved in silence, letting time and outcome do the talking. Your identity shifted from something visible to something felt. People sensed the change before they could name it. Access narrowed, familiarity faded. They realized they couldn't read you the way they used to. You no longer filled space with reassurance or explanation. Misunderstandings lingered, and you let them. Not every false perception deserves correction. You learn that privacy is power when your direction matters more than your image. Inward alignment brought a strange calm. Decisions stopped feeling heavy. Doubt had less room to echo. You weren't split between versions of yourself anymore. Who you are and how you move finally matched. That internal coherence made you harder to sway, harder to derail. You didn't need agreement to proceed. You didn't need witnesses to commit. Your solitude wasn't loneliness. It was devotion to your own trajectory. The world felt you pulling back, not in retreat, but in consolidation. You gathered yourself fully, without apology. And once you did, there was no reason to ask permission, no urge to be understood. You knew where you were going, and that was enough. You watch more than you speak now. Every movement, every pause, every glance is data. People reveal themselves without realizing it, drawn out by your stillness and silence. You notice patterns where others see chaos. Repetition becomes a language. Motives become transparent when observed with patience. You no longer respond impulsively. Instinct is refined into strategy. Timing replaces reaction. You wait for openings, for clarity, for when the moment demands a choice. Restraint isn't hesitation, it's precision. You understand that most energy spent on emotion is wasted energy, so you conserve it, deploying only what serves intention. Others expose their weaknesses through their own momentum. You don't need to interrogate or challenge, they do it themselves. Your presence becomes a mirror, reflecting truth back in subtle ways. They can't manipulate you because you move with internal calibration. Your decisions arrive quietly, calculated, undeniable in effect, but invisible in process. You know what matters and what doesn't. The inconsequential drifts past unnoticed. The critical stands out, illuminated by attention. Silence carries more than speech ever could. People feel pressure not from your words, but from the certainty in your observation. Mastery is not about domination. It's about clarity. It's the ability to operate untouched by chaos, to remain unreadable while others spill themselves fully. You wield influence through awareness, not assertion. Every interaction becomes a field experiment. Every gesture a signal. You don't need to force outcomes. Patterns reveal outcomes before action. You move when appropriate. Step back when necessary. Let the world expose itself and respond with exactitude. Nothing surprises you that observation hasn't already accounted for. You are a presence that calculates without haste, discerns without scrutiny, and acts without spectacle. Others may try to guess, to provoke, to test, but the truth is you already know, and knowing is enough. You've arrived at a place without ceremony, without fanfare, without the need for validation. All the lessons, all the losses, all the observation and restraint, they converge into a single clarity. You are not becoming something new. You are remembering what was always true. The contradictions, the depths, the extremes within you, they were never flaws. They were markers of a self already complete, already whole. Light and shadow coexist seamlessly, neither overpowering the other, both functional, both necessary. Compassion flows where it serves, indifference settles where it protects. No part of you requires apology. No part asks permission. The complexity you carry is not confusion. It is mastery. The peace you feel is not emptiness. It is alignment. You move through the world no longer negotiating identity, no longer seeking comprehension from others. Your essence is opaque to manipulation, impenetrable to expectation. Those who try to categorize you, to tame you, to claim you, encounter only the boundaries you define. You are sovereign within yourself. You are ungovernable because your authority is internal, rooted, unshakable. The presence you command is not borrowed from circumstance. It is inherent, undeniable, absolute. You are a force that needs no introduction and no approval. The paradoxes within you are not problems to solve. They are the crown you wear silently, visible only to those who pay attention. You are whole, integrated, complete, and untouched by the attempts of others to measure, control, or define you. And in this knowing, there is freedom. In this knowing, there is power. You are not a reflection of expectation, not a response to pressure, not a creation of opinion. You are the original signal, the anomaly, the full spectrum of being that never depended on permission to exist. You were never ordinary. You were never meant to be.